Alright, let's slow everything down for a second because this AFCON final deserves some context before judgment. This was not just a football match, this was Morocco hosting the biggest African tournament on home soil with their best generation in decades, chasing a first continental title since 1976. Everything was set up perfectly, the stadium was full, the narrative was ready, the script was written. On the other side, you had Senegal, calm, experienced and increasingly comfortable in finals. They were not desperate, they were not emotional, they were there to do a job. And the difference matters because when pressure arrived, one team handled it like champions and the other completely lost control of the situation. Before the chaos even began, Senegal were already showing why they are so hard to beat. They were structured, disciplined and patient. Morocco had more of the ball and more noise and more momentum. But Senegal was a team that knew exactly how this game would end if it went long. And then, late in the second half, everything exploded. The first moment that changed everything was the disallowed Senegal goal. Ismail Assar heads the ball into the net. Senegal celebrate like they won the tournament, and then confusion takes over. The referee had already blown his whistle for a foul in the build-up. That is the key issue. Once the whistle goes, VAR cannot intervene. Whether the foul was real, soft or imaginary almost becomes irrelevant because the referee removed the safety net himself. If you allow VAR to correct close penalty decisions later, then you have to allow it to check close goal decisions too. Football cannot work on selected technology. That inconsistency lit the fuse. Moments later, Morocco attack and Brahim Diaz goes down in the box. Initially, nothing is given. Then VAR intervenes. A penalty is awarded. You can argue about the contact all day, but what Senegal reacted to was the contradiction. VAR certainly mattered, but only at one end. The reaction was wrong, but it was human. Senegal players walked off the pitch under instructions from their coach. That decision took the situation from tense to dangerous. The crowd reacted. Stewards were overwhelmed. Riot police appeared. For a few minutes, this was no longer a football match. At that point, the CAF were extremely close to losing control of a continental final. This is where Sadio Mane deserves enormous credit. While everyone else was emotional, angry or panicking, Mane stayed calm. He spoke to teammates, officials and former coaches, and he convinced Senegal to return and finish the match properly. The moment probably saved the final from abandonment. Then came one of the most surreal scenes football has produced in years. After nearly 10 minutes of delay, Brahim Diaz stood over the penalty. The stadium was unsettled, the atmosphere was hostile, the pressure was enormous, and he chose a Panenka. Not brave, not clever, just completely disconnected from reality. Edouard Mendy did not dive, he caught it like a training drill. No celebration, no outrage, just silence and disbelief. That miss changed everything. Morocco never emotionally recovered. Senegal, who had already survived the worst moment, suddenly looked calm again. Then extra time arrived and football finally decided the match. Pape Gueye drove forward and finished decisively. No controversy, no debate, just a proper winning goal. Before moving on, something has to be said very clearly. Morocco staff and players repeatedly interfering with Edouard Mendy by stealing his towels was unacceptable. This was not gamesmanship or sportsmanship, this was childish behavior in a continental final. Ball boys, staff members and even senior players were involved. You cannot present yourself as a serious football nation and resort to playground tactics. It embarrassed the host and deserves criticism. If Senegal had done that in Rabat, the outrage would have been endless. Senegal were not perfect. Walking off the pitch was wrong. Their protest went too far. However, champions are defined by what they do after chaos, not before it. They returned, they stayed composed, they scored, they won. Morocco had everything in their favor: home crowd, talent, momentum and opportunity. What they lacked was composure when pressure peaked. Arguments, bench interference, towel stealing and emotional relations replaced control. This final will not be remembered for beautiful football. It will be remembered for controversy, inconsistency and one of the strangest penalty decisions ever made in a final. That is unfortunate because AFCON 2025 as a tournament was strong, the football was good, the atmosphere was brilliant, the legacy projects mattered. But finals define memory and this one leaves CAF with serious questions. Senegal are champions of Africa again, deservedly. Morocco are left wondering how a golden opportunity slipped away. And football fans everywhere are left saying the same thing. What on earth did we just watch?